Hi, I'm Chris. This is Film Dweeb, and this is what I'm picking for best film of 2024. But first, what's that? Why, yes, I have lost weight. Thanks for noticing. I thought I would do a quick video. Usually, I like to do faceless videos talking about interesting things about movies, classic. And if you want to check out that playlist, it's either here or here. I've been busy, so I thought I would just jump on camera. I've got this fancy new camera here and just talk about a year in review. But I wanted to do something about my favorite movie of the past year of 2024. So I went to go look at some of the critics and their top 10 choices. And I looked at a few and I did not even know what 60, 70, 80% of the movies they chose. I had to like Google them. And that made me feel really stupid because this is a movie channel. But I went and looked through a few of the choices and they're festival kind of favorites. Most of the critics are based in either New York or LA. And so it occurred to me that things have changed in a way where you've got the cultural center of New York and LA, and you got all this access to venues and events where cinema is the primary focus in both cities and for good reason. And that's very important to have. But it occurred to me now that it's almost become a new form of privilege because I don't know about you, but I don't subscribe to too many streaming services. I have Netflix, Amazon, and because I'm such a horror aficionado, I have Shudder. My wife hates that I have Shudder, for she hates horror films. I don't have Disney Plus. I don't have the Criterion. I know I should, but also where I live is so insanely expensive, the cost of living. And so we really have to watch what we spend, and it's insane. So when I thought about it, I thought nowadays, anyone who has access to all these movies that the critics are loving, you'll have to have quite a few more subscriptions and possibly for a higher price. So in the old days, you would pay so much for cable and you would have access to how many channels, right? And sometimes at night, you're just flipping through and you come across something. You're like, wow, what's this? And you would discover a new movie that you just never thought you would see otherwise. One example for me personally is a movie called Leolo, and it's now in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. French Canadian film, and it was a school night, back when I was in high school, finished my homework. I thought I'm gonna relax a little, watch a little TV before I go to bed. My mom had already gone to bed, so it was like 11:30 at night. And I turned to the movie channel and this movie had just started and I was gonna watch 20 minutes. I was so mesmerized, I stayed up late and watched the whole movie. That's one example, right, of how it used to be. And nowadays, you're not exposed to that kind of thing anymore. And so a lot of these top 10 films are being chosen. They'll hit the festival circuit. Someone in New York or LA will go to it. Maybe a few months later, you may see it in your city at your film festival. If not, you may have to travel or pay for some pay-per-view access. But otherwise, there'd be local repertory theaters that would specialize. And we have a couple of those here in Vancouver. But it just occurred to me, I was like, wow, I may never see some of these movies, and that's sad. So I thought to myself, all I can do is really pick the film that I saw that came out in 2024 that I thought was great. And that movie is Civil War. It's ironic, I think, in the global news, if you care to pay attention, Syria fell. The leader of Syria has fled the country and new forces have marched in. And this is as old as time itself. This has always been going on with mankind. What I liked about Civil War was that it took the stance where I think Alex Garland wanted to present the USA in a way that we're not accustomed to seeing it. When I was a kid, there was a movie called Red Dawn about the invasion of the Russians back when there was the Red Scare in the Cold War. And so an external force would come in, the Americans had to fight them back, rebels, and it was like this really patriotic thing at the time. But this is new where it's about a new civil war. And as we know, USA was born out of a civil war. And just a rundown of the story, it's the USA has politically divided. There's an American president in place for the United States of America, which no longer includes California and Texas. That's about as all we really know. I'll have to watch it again to see if there's any more detail. And the Western Alliance forces are slowly making their way towards Washington, D.C. to depose of the president. And of course, the president is on the media telling everybody, nothing's wrong, everything's okay, we're winning the war, America is winning, the Western Alliance are terrorists. And what we really know is that the Western Alliance are accusing the president of committing war crimes and, say, bombing his own people. So it's an age-old tale, like I said, where it's one man's hero is another man's terrorist and such. And so the Western Alliance are growing in numbers and they're garnering support and they're getting closer. And the USA is in trouble. And all of the movie takes it from the point of view of a journalist played by Kirsten Dunst. And so all the journalists, they're making their way to Washington, D.C. from outside, which is a dangerous thing because to get to Washington, you have to cross so many state lines. What was interesting was that at times the characters, you can't tell who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. There isn't a distinction. And there's even points where they come across a sniper nest and they ask the guy, are you guys Western Alliance? And the guy just says, what do you think? And we don't know the answer and it's vague. I thought it was the best film because it took that stance. It didn't rely on the same old story of distinguishing a good guy versus bad guy. Everyone was ambivalent in a way. And which is the point of view of a journalist, as we were told, and how they're taught is that you take a neutral stance and you become objective. And that's what the character journalists do in this movie. And in turn, because we're looking through their lens, literally at times, we have to become the same thing. And so we can't really, as an audience member, determine who's better, the president of the USA or the Western Alliance. And both seem to be committing atrocities and there's horrific things. And that's war. That is war. And I think what the point was that Alex Garland, like I said, like the whole Syrian thing just happened. Years ago, we had Gaddafi depose Saddam Hussein and whoever else. And so we're always looking at it through the news from our perspective, watching what happens in these other countries, whereas civil war forces us to look at the USA in the same way. It's turning the tables where an American president has to be deposed of. And of course, it's not from some foreign invasion, it's from internally. But it's a really ugly look at what that would be like. And I don't think it's some sort of prediction that Alex Garland is making. I think it's more of him making a comment on how we as Westerners are way too comfortable and how there's all these sayings like, we're only 3 meals away from chaos. When you become desperate, then your humanity will take a back seat. And I think that was the point of this movie. And it was really thought-provoking. It caused some controversy because maybe a handful of people on Twitter thought that Alex Garland should have taken a more subjective stance in terms of taking a side, but he didn't. And I thought that was great. To sum this up, Civil War is my pick for best film of 2024. There's a few more I would love to see, but trying to see movies sometimes is a little bit more difficult in this digital age, which is ironic. Perhaps that's why things like downloading are still so prevalent. I would like to thank you, the viewer, for this 2024. This is Film Dweeb's second year in existence. I'm going to continue making more. I might do more videos like this because they're a little easier to do. When I do these faceless videos, you have to get the footage and you have to clear it with copyright, which is such a pain because that delays the video sometimes for months. So maybe at times I'll just talk about a movie like this. So this was in a way kind of a review of Civil War, which I didn't see it until it was on Amazon Prime, which is months after, maybe a year after other people saw it. And like I said, I really enjoyed it. It's a hard watch, but it's worth watching because of it's looking at a mirror that tells you a possible future and what it could be like if we in the West got into ourselves in a situation, which is very possible. But again, I'd like to say thank you for watching Film Dweeb this year. Here's a subtle hint.